Tel Aviv University, Dr. Emmanuel Navon. And Emmanuel, you heard Minister Frage, Morocco playing a major role, a key role in helping the ties between Israel and the Palestinians. Exaggeration, or you think he is onto something there?
No, I think he's onto something, and I also think that, you know, a few years ago, the paradigm regarding Israel and the Palestinians was that you had to resolve all issues right now. That was, if you remember, the approach of Secretary of State John Kerry during the second mandate of Barack Obama, when he came to Israelis and Palestinians and said, you guys have 9 months to solve this problem. And I think think the approach...
Right, ties, meaning ties with Arab states, would follow
also,
the Israeli-Palestinian
he also said this. He also said that there will be no normalization between Israel and the Arab states without a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. I think that today, in retrospect, everybody understands that a final solution, a political deal, is not reachable, is not realistic. It doesn't mean that in the meantime, you should just sit still and not do anything. There are many things that can be done to improve the daily lives of both sides, to work on the cooperation, on certain agreements. And I think that there, Morocco has a very important role to play. I think the example of the Allenby Bridge is a good example, but I think also...
Let's talk about that, because Israel had a dispute with the Palestinians. The Palestinians wanted to see, though, the hours extended at the Allenby Bridge crossing between the West Bank and Jordan, and Israel had different security concerns about that, and Morocco played some kind of mediation role, apparently, in getting those hours, Israel and the Palestinians to agree to extend those hours.
Right, and it's interesting because very often the Palestinians see the United States as being too pro-Israel, and Israel sees the European Union as being too pro-Palestinian. And I think that here Morocco played a very important role because it's perceived, I think, as fair by both sides. I mean, neither side, I think, perceives Morocco, I mean, even though, of course, it has sympathies with the Palestinians, but I think that, unlike the United States or the European Union, Morocco isn't perceived by either side as taking really a side in this conflict. And therefore, it was able to play that role. And that is a very good example of a country like Morocco, which of course is an Arab country, but on the other hand, in its own constitution talks about the Jewish heritage of the country. So it also has very close ties, and the king has very close ties with the Jews. And I think that therefore Morocco could play a very important role, diplomatic role in this region.
I want to touch on what you just said, because unless I'm mistaken, you have family roots in Morocco, and that is something, for example, which we don't see in the Gulf, whereas you don't see a major Jewish community, or even really any significant until recently Jewish community in those countries, to draw on that as a sort of mediation between Arab and Israeli sides.
Absolutely. I think, as I said, the fact that there is, first of all, a very large Jewish community in Israel that originates from Morocco, but also the fact, as I mentioned before, that the king himself is very close to the Jews, that you can have a very free Jewish life in Morocco today.
Right, he has major Jewish advisors, very close Jewish advisors.
Members of his government. As I said, the constitution itself of Morocco mentions the Jewish heritage of Morocco. So this really puts Morocco as a country with a very old Jewish history, and that really helps Morocco play a role in the region. By the way, also an economic role, because I think that we have to look at the normalization between Israel and Morocco, not only bilaterally, but also together with the Europeans, because there are many projects on which Israel, the Arab Accords countries, and Europe could work together in energy, in water resources. Morocco, I mean, Israel, because of Israel's technology, the need of the Europeans to diversify their energy resources, and the fact that Morocco is really at the edge of solar energy. So I think we have to look also at the relationship not only bilaterally between Israel and Morocco, but some kind of triangular relation together with the Europeans.
All right, very interesting development, and as you say, Morocco really poised there maybe to play this kind of a potential mediation role. Professor Dr. Emmanuel Navon, thank you for joining us.